That's right, you're flat. Mine's as straight as your spine. And it's okay, it's just yoga.
I can feel the stretch. This pose is harder than it looks. Just breathe and hold. Wow, I think my toes are talking back to me.
Slide lightly. Keep your shoulders relaxed of tension. We're moving into a deeper stretch.
Inhale deeply, exhale slowly.
Hand up pose is called the selfie stretch. Feel the energy flowing through face. Breathe in, breathe out loud.
Feel your spine. Stay spine.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Tabitha Hassell with Tabs on Tap. Good morning. Happy Monday. I almost didn't play that video. It was really just too strange to me, but I liked the part where they have, in the very beginning of it, where Pritzker's on the ground. Of course, J.B. Pritzker, the overlord here in Illinois, and he's trying to stretch his, and I'm not making fun of him for any of that reason. I just thought that was funny, but the rest of the video was pretty darn creepy. You know, for a while there, they were making some really good videos. I haven't seen any of those lately. I think pretty much every social media platform has banned anything funny that they make because, gosh forbid, we play a funny video, you know, being sarcastic. Everybody gets their feelings hurt as usual. We have Colonel Joe Adams joining us here in just a few minutes at 8:10. Lots of things to talk about today, as usual. Some of the things I want to cover: ICE going door to door, particularly in parts of Minnesota, to tackle some Somalians that were involved in that big cover up, some fraudulent activity out there. But you're going to hear other reports. People are going to say, oh, they're going door to door. That's not in every area. They're just looking for folks that committed fraud. We're going to get into that. You know, leftism. You know, what is leftism? You know, I'm almost feeling like the divide is becoming too great to overcome. It used to be that I felt we were so close together. Now, maybe not quite as close as we once were, which is highly unfortunate, in my opinion. Troops preparing for war. You know, we're heading to war with Venezuela. You know, hopefully we'll get into that. Hopefully Colonel Joe Adams will talk to us about that just a little bit. 20 House Republicans going to announce retirements. Cash Patel. We can just talk about this now, and anyone who joins in the show later can catch up to it. But Cash Patel, in my opinion, made a misstep. As the FBI director, you just have to be very careful with what you do. And you know that the other folks who oppose you, they're going to do anything they can, anything within their power to come after you. And the story goes that on two separate occasions, Cash Patel was out with his girlfriend and his girlfriend's friend, not her best friend. I don't know if other people were with them. I don't know the details of the story, but allegedly on two different occasions, Cash Patel had provided a ride home with his, anytime Cash Patel, being the director of the FBI, is around, he's got other FBI agents as his own security detail. So it is alleged that he had one member from that alleged security detail drive his girlfriend's drunk best friend home. And you know, you really just can't do that. Good morning, Sherry. Good morning, Brenda. You know, if you are the director of the FBI, you've got to really dot those I's and cross those T's. And you have to make sure that everything always looks appropriate. Because while it may not seem like a big deal, because he's obviously just looking out for somebody who maybe has had a little bit too much to drink and shouldn't be driving, you know, call an Uber. Get a cab. Do not have somebody from your detail drive your girlfriend's drunk friend home. Do not do that. It's just a big no. So if that is true, I'm sure, trust me, we'll find out more, because gosh knows they're going to be right on Cash Patel. Again, we're just hanging in there waiting for Colonel Joe Adams to pop in here in just about 3 minutes. You know, something I want to make very clear, because I have not personally been accused of this, but I've seen the stuff floating around on social media just in general, that just in general, conservatives don't like people with brown color. And, we've been hearing that for a long time for the Black community. Now we're hearing it from the Somalis. We're hearing it from other folks. It has nothing to do with the color of your skin. It has absolutely nothing to do with the color of anyone's skin. This is all about people who come into our country and take advantage of a system. Anytime we're talking about any group of individuals, sometimes individual people, it's not about that particular person. I've seen all these videos going around, you probably have too, on social media, that, oh, we're so racist. We don't like people with brown skin. And that's why we're trying to deport all these people. No, let me correct that for you. It is the media. This is all media propaganda, because what the media doesn't show you is all the white folks being deported. They don't show you that. They only want to have the cameras on the brown folks that are being deported so they can come back and say, oh, it's just, you guys are all just racist. You just want to get the brown people out of the country. They don't show the vast number of Russians, white Russians, people from Ireland. Oh my gosh, yes, people from Ireland have been deported too, who overstayed visas or were here on some other illegal means. Ukrainians, there's actually been a lot of Ukrainians who have been deported, white Ukrainians. Yep, that's right. But you know what? The media doesn't focus on that. They only want to focus on the brown people. Why? Because they can turn that against us and say, oh, the Trump administration, conservatives, they don't like people of color, so they're deporting them all. And the same as they talk about Mexico, a good portion of the people that are being deported are not from Mexico. They're not Mexicans. They're not people from Mexico. There may be some, but most of the people who are coming in who are being deported are people like El Salvador or Guatemala or some of these other countries in the Caribbean. It's just all media propaganda. And it's kind of strange to me, but I really do believe that people on the left, they just believe everything they hear. They watch MSNBC, they watch CNN, which CNN has been kind of turning tides a little bit to some, from some of the videos I've seen, which is really frustrating. I think a lot of liberals, but I think they watch these different liberal news shows and they just take it for truth. They don't investigate any further. They don't look at it objectively. They're just like, oh yeah, the Trump administration, they're just deporting all these brown people. They don't want brown people in the country. They never ever once look and think, oh, there's a lot of white people being deported too. Nope, doesn't matter. Does not matter, because it's a lot easier for them to say it's about brown, right? All that's happening in Minnesota right now, I just said ICE going door to door. They're going door to door right now. I think maybe today was the first day, or maybe today they're ramping up to do that. But yes, they are going door to door in parts of Minneapolis, other parts of Minnesota. Why? Because there is a big fraud scheme that went on. What was it, $100 million? Some say up to $1 billion. a big scam committed, by the Somalis. So yeah, they're going door to door and they're rounding people up. Nothing to do with color. All right, I see Colonel Joe Adams waiting in the sidelines. We're going to grab him very quickly here. Good morning, Colonel Joe Adams with the Washington Guard. How are you this morning?
Good, real good.
Well, I am very happy to hear you. Before we get too far into things, anything going on with the Washington Guard this past weekend?
Nothing this past weekend, because next weekend is the Reef around America. And what was the name of that?
Immaculate Conception.
At the
Yes.
Immaculate Conception Cemetery in Union, Missouri. So you don't have to be a guard to show up. Would appreciate that. Tell us you're going to be there and come out and help the guard. And that's not too often that the guard asks for help from the public. We usually help the public, but come on out. It's a good cause, and I'll be there, and Deanna will be there, and it's a great idea what they're doing across the country with these reefs on the grave sites. Yeah, so it's worth it coming out, and the weather's supposed to be good too. So
We've got it. Yeah, I was kind of surprised. I just looked at the weather forecast before, starting the show, and I don't see any snow in our future. Maybe a, flurry or two, but nothing accumulating, which is really nice to know.
no. Hey, did you get that McLaren Act that I sent you?
No, I did not. I did not see that. I'm
1952.
sorry. I'm not sure why.
Yeah, in 1952, it's called the McLaren Act, and they passed it before Congress, In the McLaren Act, it was actually designed for anti-communists because in the 50s, the big move was on the communists, keeping communists out of the country.
Yes.
But the way it was defined about anybody who comes into the United States with the idea of overthrowing the government through violence or whatever is refused entry to the United States, and it passed. I think it was clear into the 90s before they got rid of it during Clinton. But the McLaren Act, look it up, 1952 McLaren Act basically defines keeping Islam out of this country and now allowing them in.
And is that based on the fact that they don't assimilate, that it doesn't, that Sharia law does not correlate well with American law?
Well, they openly admitted now they've here to take over, and
Oh, yeah.
there's nothing we can do about it. And they keep forcing the issue. Now they want, wherever they want public prayer with the loudspeakers and things. They just keep pushing. But we should never let them in to begin with. So now we got a problem.
Well, I
And,
was going to say it may be too late. It may be too late because I don't, at this point, all we need is one more Democrat, liberal president to win, and it's all over.
if you do the math, I mean, J.D. Vance is not Donald Trump. The closest thing to Donald Trump they had going for him, an entrepreneur and a real patriot, and it was Charlie Kirk, and they got rid of him. So, in fact, the reason they promoted Charlie Kirk's death was the fact that they wished they had killed President Trump long before he became a candidate. They saw it coming. Now they're reading the tea leaves. That's why Charlie Kirk got his. So.
Well, you're probably right, because Charlie Kirk, one thing he did through Turning Point USA is, again, not only was he a political speaker, commentator, and went around to these different colleges, but also, as most of you know, he owned a political action committee, and a lot of what that political action committee was doing was going against various, Muslim candidates that wanted to bring Sharia law into different areas of the country. That was big on his agenda.
Oh yeah, get ready. The biggest problem we've got almost half this country that's against Trump and against doing the right thing. An indicator. I'm big on indicators with the intelligence industry. Here's an indicator that it's unbelievable. The Tennessee election, the lady running for office out of Nashville publicly says she hates Nashville. She hates the people. She hates country western music. She hates everything. And she got 40-some% of the vote from the same people she says she don't like.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah. That's crazy.
That's insane. She should have got one vote. Instead, she gets 40-some% of the vote.
Selected, not elected, right?
Right. So that's the problem in this country. You got almost half the people that are against doing the right thing.
True, but think about Nashville. If you've ever spent any time in Nashville, there's a lot of liberalism in Nashville. Quite honestly, a lot of the country music singers that we see, I don't personally listen to new country music, but I certainly understand some of the personas. You have to remember anyone that's a country music star or a celebrity, somebody who's an actor or an actress or a musician, they're all just a brand. Their brand has to represent something for sales, because that's what they are. They're a sales brand. And therefore, a lot of those country musicians aren't even conservative. A lot of them are actually quite liberal. And that's why you don't see them openly supporting Donald Trump. Look what happened with Garth Brooks. Remember when he came out and went against conservative opinion, and it hurt him, with his bar there, of course, in Nashville, but Nashville is actually a fairly liberal area. And, it's any urban area, of course, generally is.
Yeah, well, most are liberals.
Most musicians, most celebrities absolutely are liberal.
But this, there's people listening to this show right now that have not done one thing to prepare for what's coming. And the inevitable is a civil war in this country. It's going to happen, people. I wish I was wrong for the first time in my life collecting intelligence, and I was wrong, but it's not, because half the people, unless we all get on board with this thing, and to find the enemy amongst us and get rid of them, we're going to civil war.
I think there's a very good possibility of that. Colonel Adams, what I guess I don't understand is how do we get so polarized? I used to be able to say, even a year ago, something I talked about so often, and I've talked about it many times since, is how we're really not that far apart. Conservatives, liberals, not that far apart. Most people are in the middle. I'm not a Republican. I would never consider myself a Republican. I don't like the Republicans in Congress any more than I like the Republicans on the Democrat side. I don't like any of them. I don't definitely am not a Republican, but I used to feel like every major issue we could find some common ground on. But what I feel like we're seeing right now is that leftists hate Donald Trump so much. They hate the man. They hate the man so much that it doesn't matter if he has good policy or not. They still hate it. Look at gas prices going down, and what are liberals saying? Well, we're still paying less, than what they're paying in Europe, and it's not Donald Trump bringing the gas prices down. That was Joe Biden's policies. They're always going to find an excuse to hate him. Somebody on the comment line was saying something about how much Donald Trump hates the cities. And that is absolutely not true. Donald Trump, I think, is being the president for all Americans, but liberals hate him so much that they cannot see past that TDS and say, oh, we just rescued 62,000 children that were being trafficked, unaccompanied minors that came in during the Biden administration. But they'll come up with some excuse why that's a terrible thing.
I think they took 4,200 just out of Memphis, if I'm not mistaken. But
all across the country,
people used to talk about party politics. Well, now that the party politics, it doesn't matter what's right or wrong; it's what's good for the party. And don't forget, the Chinese use the same term, the party. Everything's about the party, except they've got one party over there. So it's party. It's how can you vote on something and have 48 to 51 or 48 to 52 or 51 to? I mean, how could one side be so against something when the other side's so for it? And that's party politics. So that's how we become polarized.
It's just to such an extreme. I really did. I always thought, if we got enough people together in one room and we sat down and hammered out these issues, because I have friends who are just extremely liberal, who hate Donald Trump. They hate conservative, politics, period. And we will sit down and we'll talk and we'll say, well, okay, well, what about this issue? What about this issue? And we can find some, common ground. But I feel like the hate for Donald Trump is just so extreme that everything's off the table now. No matter how far we come and how willing we are to negotiate that middle ground, they're just like, nope, not under Donald Trump.
Yeah, this is a very, very strange time in this country's history.
But that's what's going to take us into the Civil War, though, right? The fact that we have these polarized opinions, the fact that there's one side of people who will not go to that middle ground, they will not negotiate. They just hate us, and that hate's going to take over.
Unfortunately, yes, but I firmly believe the only thing to resolve this issue is civil war, because I talk to the military people, and I talk to all the different branches, the different militias, and by the way, there's a lot of militias starting up now nationwide. So that's another indicator. Why are people preparing to take up weapons against who? The common enemy, Islam. Islam's probably a bigger threat to us than the massively illegals coming into this country. Even though a lot of the percentage of the illegals are criminals, that's understandable. Donald Trump, when he was in these first terms, said they're bringing in drugs, they're bringing in crime, and everybody chastised him for saying that. Well, guess what? It was true. It was true.
Well, it is true. Colonel Adams, here's some facts for people. What do we have in this country? Or I'm going to say close to facts, if I can remember the numbers correctly. There's is there 1.5 billion Muslims in the entire world? Is that right? 1.5 billion, something along those lines. And we have, and when you take radicalization to be about 15, somewhere between 15, 20% of those, I read that it comes out to be about 300, little over 300 million Muslims across the world. Now, this is for the whole world, that have become radicalized, people who have the ideology that they want to take over Western culture. They want to get rid of anyone. We're all infidels if you believe in Western culture. And when you start thinking about that, that's higher than the population of the United States, period. And if you take that 300 million people and you fan them out across the world and they continue to radicalize people like wildfire, which is what's happening right now, we definitely have a big problem on our hands.
No, but it all comes back to the same thing. Is party politics is destroying this country. They say they want to work across the aisle. No, they don't. No, they don't. Hey, but let me comment on these protesters when ICE shows up to arrest these people, and you got all these middle-aged women out there with their phones and their cameras and all this stuff.
It's always the middle-aged white women, isn't it?
Yeah, it really. Who are they pissed off at? I mean, you think that they would want to get rid of the illegals and get rid of the Islam, whatever.
They're brainwashed. They're brainwashed.
My only experience with riot detail was back in, I think it was 71 during the Vietnam riots in Washington, when the protesters tried to close down. Well, they did close down Washington, and they occupied the Key Street Bridge, which is the main route into Washington, and they sent in the National Guard and didn't work, and then they sent in 82nd Airborne, that didn't work, and then all of a sudden they gathered a bunch of Marines up from Camp Lejeune who have no training, nothing, no training, never knew how to use a nightstick or a club. I mean, nothing. The riot training, and they sent us to Washington. And when I asked the major, I said, "What's our mission statement? Okay, what's the rules?" He goes, "No rules. Just get in there and kick their ass." We put 1,100 people in the hospital the first hour, and thousands arrested. It got so bad after we opened up the government, the Key Street Bridge. We went on patrol with the local police, and we had orders: if you looked like a protester, arrest them. Now, so when these people go to these areas, these apartment complexes to arrest the illegals, there should be a rule. If you interfere whatsoever in law enforcement, then you get arrested too.
I mean, there is a rule, there is a law, but here's the thing, Colonel Adams. I don't know if you recall, or if you were even listening to the show then. I don't know. Maybe it was 3 weeks ago. I started the show, and I was so angry, and I feel that way today too, because I've just watched this morning all these various protests taking place across the country, and you are 100% right. And what I was so angry about that day, I'm like, we have laws to prevent this. If ICE is detaining someone or arresting someone, and you're coming around and you're grabbing on ICE, trying to get in the way, you absolutely can and should be arrested. But why aren't they doing it? Why isn't the Trump administration, why aren't they handing down the orders that say, hey, well, of course we know why, because they have local police chiefs and mayors that get in the way, but they should say, this is federal law enforcement. They are above the order of your local police department. Round everybody up, surround them, take them all in, bring the buses in, get them all off the streets. I don't understand it.
They're not. That's what they should do. Lock them all up. Put $1,000 cash bond before the release. Let them reach into their pockets and see how many show up the next time.
Charge them all as terrorists. Why aren't we doing that? Why aren't we charging them all as terrorists?
Yeah. I got neighbors that should be qualified as terrorists. Anyways, so the left serves the party, not the country, more than the Republicans, even though the Republicans are bad. Hey, what was that note that you sent in about some Republicans are resigning?
I don't know the names. There are 20 House Republicans that are set to retire. I don't know which one, and since I don't like really any of them, I don't really care, but what it does bring to mind, though, is the fact that, A, why are they all retiring at once? B, we need term limits, so we need to be circulating these people in and out either way. I hope that we can replace them with better Republicans, or maybe some people who are a little bit more libertarian or, more to the center, but I don't know what's going to happen.
And think about politics in America. Nothing changes; it just gets worse.
You know what? We need to wipe this.
The direction we're heading is nowheresville. I mean, people are going to talk about turn this country around. I got news for you. Do the math. if they deported 1,000 of these characters a day, that's not even 500,000 people a year. So I think that the ingenious thing was when they just pay them to leave. Actually, economically, that's a good. And there's been more voluntary leaving than what we've arrested. So
There
that's
has,
a
and you know, I want to backtrack on one thing, and then I want to comment to what you just said. And I'm going to backtrack on this, and I'm going to go back to what you just said. I want to backtrack to the Republicans, 20 House Republicans retiring, announcing their retirement. You know, I don't know which one it is. Like I said, I don't like any of the Republicans in Congress. I don't like any of the Democrats in Congress, except for maybe, one or two. But I'm just curious, who are, Colonel Adams, I don't know if you have any opinions, who are the good conservatives, the good Republicans? Because I can't think of too many. And I don't like Hawley, so I'm not even going to put his name in the hat. I've never been a fan of Josh Hawley.
Yeah, he's questionable. I like him one day and I hate him the next.
I like Eric Schmidt.
Eric's a good man. Yeah.
I like Eric Schmidt. He's been coming out with it. But I still think that Eric Schmidt is one of those people who's playing the game. And I do like him, but I also feel like he's one of those people that's kind of playing the game where he's going to go along with whatever he has to go along with, to get where he wants to go, which is, of course, the presidency.
Well, you spend an hour with Mark McCloskey and talk to him about politics and playing the game. He learned the hard way. I mean, he never had a chance. He never had a chance to win. It was already selected. So big party politics. But I say, if you get a chance to talk to Mark or get him on your show, just talk about his
Oh yeah, I've interviewed him several times. Not on, I don't think I have on this show, but I have several, in other shows I was on. Colonel Adams, back to your other point about, deporting people, getting people out. Have you heard some of these stories about the fact that, we're rounding people up, we're deporting them, thousands of people, have been, hundreds of thousands of people have been deported. But whenever people are deported, sometimes they're arrested at their workplace, sometimes on the street. They don't get to go back home and pack a bag. They don't get to go back home and take care of their loose ends. So now I'm hearing all these reports about all of these empty houses, empty apartments, vehicles who are just sitting in people's driveways with no owner. What's going to happen with all of this stuff? All of these empty houses, apartments, and vehicles?
Well, that's a good question. So, yeah, that's unfortunately, it's a byproduct of what's happening. So, too bad. Figure it out.
Well, what's crazy about it is that I just watched a little video clip the other day of this guy. He's like, my 2 roommates were deported. This guy probably called in ICE on them. But he's like, my 2 roommates are deported. I got the whole house to myself. He's like, they left cash here. They have 2 vehicles here. He's like, I'm driving their vehicles and using their cash and all their stuff. He's like, I inherited their sound systems and their games. And I'm like, I never really thought about it from that point before.
Yeah, neither have I. It's pretty funny.
I'm like, yeah, he probably made that call.
Yeah. So anyway, we're in a mess. I really don't think, this immigration thing. I mean, look at Sweden's gone. You can't even walk down the street in Sweden. Sweden's gone. French are gone. Britain's next. I mean, they're just in a mess. Mass migration, especially with they're bringing in a culture of corruption, crime. I mean, look at the Somalis, what they went and did. And some of that money went back to terrorism over in Europe. So our tax dollars help them fund. But one of my friends said on a podcast that he said, here's what in those food stamps, what do you call it, the food stamps things now?
The SNAP benefit?
SNAP, whatever that means. So these, they watch these guys. They come in and get their $600 SNAP, walk in, get it, walk down the street, sell it for $200 for cash, and go buy drugs. So
people have been doing that probably since the government started the welfare program. No question about it. But a lot of the money that they took went to Al-Shabaab. Al-Shabaab is one of the most dangerous and brutal terror groups, in the world. And it's crazy that they were funding Al-Shabaab. And yes, ICE absolutely should round up all of these people. If you were stealing money from taxpayers, stealing money from the government, stealing money, however it is, it doesn't really matter, and you're giving it to a terror organization, you don't belong here. I don't care if you're white or you have brown skin, it doesn't matter. You don't belong here. You were here for the wrong reasons. Now it's time to go. But for whatever reason, I think that's the difference between us and liberals is liberals think everybody has the right to be here, that if they want to be here, we should let them be here. I never thought I would see a time, and this speaks to how strong TDS can be, which is truly, I mean, it really is a mental disorder where we have liberals who will say, I want to keep murderers and rapists on the streets of my country because I hate Donald Trump so much that I can't agree with his policies to get rid of these people. But if it were Joe Biden or Obama or somebody else who came up with the same policy, oh, they'd be all for it.
Unbelievable. We are simply letting in the wrong people. It was a great screening process during when the first big immigration happened after the Civil War, and these people come here to live off our government and not to add anything to the government. I mean, the successful people that are coming over here are the minority.
Oh, Colonel Adams, I think you froze up for just a moment. Hopefully, it is just temporary. I know the system can be a little finicky. All right, well, we got Colonel Adams. He is frozen for just a moment. He'll unfreeze here shortly. Monday morning, Colonel Joe Adams with the Washington Guard. While we're waiting for him to unfreeze, the Washington Guard, you can reach out to the Washington Guard, WashingtonGuard.com. When Colonel Adams unfreezes, one of the things that I would like to talk to him about is we're hearing a lot of warnings. It is imminent that we go to war with Venezuela. It's imminent. We have our ground troops in place. That's happened over the past couple of days. I watched the video of our ground troops preparing for boots on the ground in Venezuela, and it was hard to watch. These just very young men and women getting ready to get into gosh knows what. And then we're starting to hear these warnings about retaliation. Oh, I think we have Colonel Adams popping back in with us. Let's see here. Do we have you back, Colonel Adams? Not yet. Let's see. Well, let's see. We'll get him back in here. It might take some. All right. I'm not sure what happened there. I'm just not sure. But Colonel Adams, do we have you? No. Well, we'll have him back here in just a few minutes. And I don't know what happened. My camera switched sides during the midst of all of this. But we will get him back in and be happy to have Colonel Adams joining us. It could be on my end. It may not be on his end because my camera just kind of flipped and then flipped back. So we will see, but he'll pop back in. But again, something that is on my mind is we are definitely at a point of war with Venezuela. I don't think there's anything we can do to stop that at this situation. Now, Donald Trump has warned Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro to leave. Remember, we talked about that last week. Take your family and leave. If you want to survive, he literally said the word survive. If you want to survive, take your family and leave. Well, of course, Maduro did not leave. He has no plans of leaving. And I kind of think he thinks he's going to have some backup, that he's going to have some other countries joining in, but that's just not going to happen. And he's going to be on his own. He probably needs to leave. But instead, that's not going to happen. And now what I'm concerned with, and I keep hearing these reports of, is that we have cartel members here in the United States who are starting to issue threats to Americans. That if the Trump administration continues to take out these boats, drug-running boats, carrying narcotics, I don't know how people can say, oh, they're just fishermen, or, oh, they're tourists. They're just taking a boat ride. No. And what I really don't understand, and I think we have Colonel Adams popping back in here with us. Let me grab him. Colonel Adams, we got you. I hear you. I see you. Sorry, I'm not sure what happened. Sorry if that was on my end, and it very well may have been on my end.
I heard you talking about the drug boats getting bombed right now. Of course, the Democrats get on the air, and all the Democrats are against the second strike. In fact, they're even against it. How do you know those are drugs? Now,
And
I
that,
listened
it's funny you say that.
I listened to Pete Hegseth, and he also almost screwed up. Listen, people, do you know how many intelligence operatives we have down there? You know how many people that we pay that's inside those organizations out down in
Yes.
Venezuela? We know what's on the boats. We know where they're going. We know where they're headed. And just because that one boat, so now how did they know that that boat was not heading for the United States? It was here. It was headed for someplace else. Well, and then the Democrats say, "Well, why did we bomb that boat when it wasn't even headed to the United States?" Are you insane?
They
It's
are. Yes,
you
they are.
know, I was hoping I was hoping Pete would have said, "Kill them all," because that's the way I feel about it. You want to haul drugs and they survive and hang on the boat? Oops, blow them up again. These
Yeah,
are
right.
drugs.
And
These
he didn't even
people.
make that call. They're blaming him, and it wasn't even his call. His Admiral Bradley had the authority to act on, guess what? His own cognizance. He's able to make that call on his own.
These drug smugglers are selling death and destruction
Yes.
and pain and hurting people. Kill
Yes.
them all. I wish I could have gave that command because I would have. No,
Colonel Adams, here's something that I think you have the answer to that I don't understand is that I've watched the media available videos of these boats come out. You can see the drugs. I mean, you can see the packages. Some of these boats have been so obvious. You can literally see the drugs wrapped up in various packages
sure.
in the boat. So why don't they try to hide it? That's what I don't understand. They know, and why are they continuing to still send boats out? They know the minute that boat leaves that we're going to strike it. So I don't understand who would get on that boat knowing, well, which of course the cartels force them to, so they don't really probably have a choice. But I mean, I just don't understand why they continue to send these drug boats out with the obvious drugs, knowing we're going to strike it. It makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
I just can't wrap my brain around it.
Well, thanks. I appreciate that. They should have a flag that says I'm a drug dealer. I know that's just the type of those boats that are out in open sea like that, those speedboats. That's just the way they are. Because the more boats you have, the less drugs you can haul, and it's all engine. They've got to keep that speed up. So they're designed for fast speed, and any kind of extra weight will just slow them down. They're better off going faster than slow
Them.
obviously.
I mean, wouldn't you think, like, in my opinion, I'm not a cartel member, I'm not a drug runner, but if I were a drug runner, a cartel member, and every single day I filled my Jeep with drugs and I backed it out of my driveway, and when I got out to the street, my car would get blown up. So the next day I take my next Jeep and I fill it with drugs and I pull out to the street, and as soon as I hit the street, they blow up my car. So the next day, I fill up my Jeep with drugs and I pull it out to the street. It's like I don't get the insanity portion of this. That they continue to take these drug boats out. They know we can see them. They know we're going to strike them. We know we're going to kill the cartel members, the drug runners, and of course they're probably using poor innocent civilians, throwing them on these drug boats because they know they're going to get killed. I don't understand why they keep doing it. Are they just hopeful that maybe one of these boats will get out?
Yeah, Matt, yeah, to some degree, yeah, they send 10 out, hope eight show up. But also, don't forget they could be running some decoy boats on us too.
True.
What I'm as long as we control the intelligence and the results of these bombings, we're okay. But if they send out some people with a couple kids in it in those boats, what are they going to do?
Right.
What if,
Absolutely.
are you going to blow them up?
I don't think they'll blow them up, but I do think the Coast Guard will go out and stop them and make sure those drugs don't go anywhere. I don't think we're going to, but we could, it would be a tough call from, the Trump administration, and it would be a tough decision, for, let's say, somebody like Admiral Bradley, who has to act quickly. Do you take out children? Do you take out elderly people? Do you take out women to protect the hundreds of thousands of people who could potentially be killed by the drugs that are being taken out? Definitely, I would imagine a tough decision.
No, not for me. I'd blow them up.
Well, our country,
I don't care. I don't
we've
care.
killed many women and children over the years.
No. I don't care about that.
Yeah.
All I do, I care about Americans.
Right.
Period. I don't care about any of those people. You can pack it with kids. You can pack it with women. I don't care about that. If you're a drug runner, you're a drug runner. Blow them up. I don't
Yeah.
care.
There,
I'm not.
there's
I'm not saying they won't use them as a shield. And
right.
of course, the Democrats get a hold of the video, and now,
Oh,
oh my God, now we got to stop. Now we got to stop blowing up the drug boys.
at
No.
this point, Colonel Adams, I wouldn't be surprised if a group of Democrats didn't put a woman and some children on a drug boat and push them out into the ocean just as bait so that we will, make that misstep and destroy it. I wouldn't be surprised by that at all. But as I was saying when you weren't with us for a few moments there, is that, and I'm sure you know this, we have troops ready very nearby to Venezuela, ready for boots on the ground in Venezuela. We're hearing it's imminent and that it could happen at any time. Nicolas Maduro is not going to leave Venezuela like Trump had asked him to do. So we're kind of at this point where we really have no choice. We have the documentation to back up why we need to do this because we know that Nicolas Maduro intentionally opened up the prisons and sent his gang members and worst criminals, to the United States. We know that there's just a big drug operation that's taking place right now. So we know we're going to go in and I don't, but what is our mission there? That's what I don't understand. Are we just there to get rid of Nicolas Maduro and the cartels, or are we there to instill our own, puppet government? What are we looking to do in Venezuela?
No, I think you covered that real well. I mean, it's a narco state, but and we got a narco state on our southern border, just as bad, with a longer history, and they're working together. The cartels there and the cartels down there. I mean, they're all in the same basket. Here's the thing about Donald Trump. Now, I watched these interviews over the weekend, and everybody talks about our problems, and I'm waiting. They don't have any answers. They talk about the problems. Donald Trump addresses the problem and does something about it. Nobody else does.
True. That is very true. And I think that's the business sense in him is that, as a business owner, a very successful business owner at that, he's able to sit back and look at the problems as if we're a corporation and run our country like a corporation that, okay, if I have this problem, and this problem, this is how I'm going to solve, those problems. So I do think the Trump administration hasn't answered everything, because they're thinking with common sense and not emotions like the liberal, there's no auto pen, signing off on all this legislation. But, Colonel Adams, I don't know if you've heard this or not. I'm starting to hear a lot of warnings that we here in the United States could expect violent attacks from cartel members, particularly somebody like Trende Aragua that's based out of Venezuela, because they're getting to the point where they don't like what's happening. They're not getting their drug supplies. They're losing billions of dollars a week because we keep attacking these boats. And now we're talking about boots in the ground going into Venezuela and getting rid of the cartel members. And then Mexico's next. No question about it. Venezuela's number one, Mexico's number two.
Yes, and everybody all these patriots are on TV and the politicians about how we've got to get back to the America that we were, but they don't tell you how to do it. Donald Trump's doing it. He's doing it, and that's why they hate him. Donald Trump does things that other people don't have the guts to do.
Well, going after the cartels, absolutely. But no, but let's dig a little deeper here when we talk about the Trump administration going after the cartels. Why didn't the Joe Biden administration go after the cartels? Why didn't the Obama administration go after the cartels? Why didn't the Bill Clinton administration or the George Bush administration? Now, of course, Bill Clinton, we can go back to Mena, Arkansas, and get a good idea why Clinton didn't go after the cartels. But but why is Donald Trump the first president who's going after the cartels?
He's the first president to do the right thing, period. And some of that money from the Biden administration and everybody else, some of that money goes into some congressmen's pockets. You know that. Follow
Well,
the
that's why I don't like Congress. Even Republicans, when these 20 Republican House members announce their retirements, I'll probably be cheering and clapping because I can guarantee you the reason why they're retiring. Why else would they retire? They're retiring because they're losing their kickbacks. They're going to be called out. Is my opinion. Now I don't know who the names are yet, but I can promise you there's just as many corrupt Republican people in Congress as there are on the Democrat side. They're all corrupt.
For the most part, yeah. When I was in Walgreens, and a lady stopped me and recognized me, and talked about the Washington Guard, and 86 woman, and we started talking about politics, and she openly says, it's like we've accepted the fact of fraud and corruption is just the way it goes. I mean,
Correct.
that's third world. That's third world mentality. All these Somalis that came in here, they brought what they were doing there here. It was like it was an opportunity. They weren't here to help America. They were here to run scams and send our tax dollars back to terrorists. So we've got an 86-year-old woman that admits, well, everybody's corrupt. That was her opinion. So we've accepted corruption as a way of life in this country. That's bad. I'll give you an
Well, it
example.
is bad. But what happens when the Al Shabaab, who is getting heavily funded by the Somalis in the United States, what about the drug cartels in Mexico who are heavily funded by people who are here in the United States? What about, the cartels in Venezuela, heavily funded by people here in the United States? And those are the people we're eliminating. We're kicking them out of the country. We've had enough of that type of corruption and of the support of these different cartels. So that's what brought me to bring up that topic. That what if and trust me, we probably will. People are warning Americans, expect these attacks to occur in your own homeland because Al Shabaab's not happy with us right now. The cartels, and there's various cartel members not happy. Kevin Joseph made a really good point. He said, you know what? The Venezuela is a training ground for terrorism. And we know that ISIS on the other side of our southern border has been training some of the cartel members for quite some time.
Well, don't forget, hey, we talked about this a few weeks ago. We're due for attack by Islam in February.
Right,
Intelligence.
right.
So, what happened to that conversation? Now, the Washington Guard's preparing for it. Of course, we're low on the target list. Our concern is the fact that the gig's up, and they know we're on to them, and they change the priorities as far as target opportunity and go
Right.
for it. Do they not attack the tier 1 hospitals, or do they change a venue and attack a smaller one? I can tell you right now, attacking Washington Mercy out here in Washington, Missouri, it would be nothing. I mean, nothing. I mean, there's very little security, if any. I can't remember even seeing a security guard in there.
As is the case in a lot of hospitals, most hospitals. Now, when I go to St. Louis University, first thing I see when I walk in is there is a guard sitting at the desk. Now, I don't know if he's armed or not. I know the other door I go in, you go to two different doors. One's for the hospital, one's for the medical building. There's a guard at each door, so he sees you pass. They've got cameras in the elevator. But here's the thing, Colonel Adams, let's remind everybody what this threat is. Those guards may not recognize the threat, because the threat is that these terror organizations have obtained the uniforms of law enforcement, of military, of hospital workers. So would a security guard even recognize, somebody who is plotting attack? And not all terrorists have dark skin. A lot of them are just as white as I am. You can't look at somebody and say, oh, they've got brown skin, they could be a terrorist. Not to mention the fact that 90% of the doctors in America have brown skin.
Oh yeah, yeah. I didn't think of that. Yeah, you're right. And they're good. They're good doctors too.
They're very good doctors. Very good doctors. A lot of them are my doctors. And a lot of, as a matter of fact, two of the doctors I have, one comes from Syria, and the other one is from, I don't remember. He told me once, and I don't remember. Maybe Pakistan, but very good doctors. But the fact is that there is a very serious threat. The FBI has told us it's a very serious threat. They have literally already purchased the uniforms. They already have the uniforms. During Charlie Kirk's memorial service, Homeland Security had a special branch there that is very well versed in what a official uniform looks like versus somebody who might be wearing a fake uniform. So we know that these terror groups have gone out to 5 different states in the country and purchased the uniforms, again, of law enforcement, of military, of medical professionals. So I don't think they did all that for nothing.
No, yeah, and they're not talking about it, but the FBI and DHS are specifically targeting tier one trauma hospitals who has facilities, and they're searching the neighborhoods for miles around them, all of the storage facilities with the radar detector, different type of detectors for explosives, and they're searching those storage facilities because they figure if they're going to attack, that they're going to be someplace stationary close to the hospital. So they are doing something. They're just not talking about it.
Well, and that's good. They don't need to talk about it, but it's also, let's remind people too. This is a two-tier attack. Their goal is to come into these, as you said, like a tier one trauma center type hospital. They're going to come in. They're going to stage the initial attack, and then what's going to happen, which could be like a suicide bomber or something along those lines, or maybe an active shooter. We're not really sure. And then from there, they're going to have other terrorists wearing law enforcement or medical personnel uniforms, and they're going to direct everybody to a certain area. So when people start running and panicking, they're going to listen to the direction of these fake law enforcement individuals or these fake EMTs or medical professionals, and then they're going to corral them all to another area where the second attack occurs. So it's a two-stage attack.
Yeah, look up the Mumbai attack. What was it, in '82 or something? And that's just the exact same thing that they did over there in India, Mumbai. I think.
And there's not a lot you can do, to protect yourself from it, other than know the threat exists. And if something happens and you make it through that first attack, don't go where they tell you to go. Go somewhere else. That's what I would do. I'd be like, nope. You tell me to go that way, I'm going to go that way.
Meanwhile, all the security in all the hospitals only carry handguns.
Right.
We think the bad guys are going to have.
Well, they need to bolster that. But Colonel Adams, I'm also concerned about just regular Americans, not at a trauma center, not at a facility, healthcare facility. You're just out minding your business, doing some shopping for the holidays, and then all of a sudden, guess what? Either a terror attack occurs, or just some cartel member who's furious because we've taken billions of dollars out of their pockets just starts attacking Americans.
Oh, it's coming. It's coming. I mean, don't forget these guys blow themselves up. The security guard has got a handgun at the entrance, and the guy walks in with a suicide vest. It's over. These people blow themselves up.
Well, they just made an arrest last week. I don't recall the guy's name because I wasn't planning on talking about it today, but he was, again, a white-looking man. When you look at him, he's got white skin. He's not brown of any shade. And they arrested him as part of a terror plot. And he's not from here. I can't remember where he came in. Some of you might know where he came into this country from. But he said, my only goal in life is to be a martyr and to kill as many Americans as I possibly can. And he is one of many people that feel this way.
Well, tell him to come out to Washington. I'll help him out. He wants to be a martyr. So, and that's another thing too. I hate to keep pounding my shield all the time, but people, at some place, sometime, you're going to be on your own. You really, what's your plan? Have you sat down with your kids and without scaring them and have a plan? Simple as that.
Most people don't have a plan.
They don't have a plan. And then when this happens, they'll wish the hell they'd have sat down and made some preparation. Just go
I
to
agree.
I mean, it's just, we're in a mess. We're in a mess. And I don't think we politically can correct it. It's going to take some form of force, some form of blood in the streets before it's over. And I hate to say that, but I'm a military man. I've traveled the world. I've lived in crap holes everywhere, and I know the mentality of these people. They're 9th and 10th century. It's just, you have to deal with it. These people are here to do us harm. Period.
They are. That's Colonel Adams. That's why I don't understand the Democrat argument. And I just talked to I argued, I guess, in a polite way with somebody on social media about this yesterday. They said we've got to take guns away. We need to, have these big mass gun buyouts in every city, and then we'll be safer. I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, where does that come from? There's no common sense in that at all. Because, gee, I'm a criminal. You're going to tell me there's a gun buyback program. We're going to start disarming Americans. that I'm going to come in as a criminal and give you my gun? My brain is just ready to explode with the dumbness of the statements that they sometimes have when it comes to gun control.
That's worked out real well for Britain and France, real well.
Right.
As a,
I
I
know.
know.
It's
But don't,
crazy.
don't, but don't forget, one of the plans of Islam was to get into politics, and they're there. They're there, and they got a lot of money backing them. So, I mean, money makes it go around.
And
Uh,
let's remind people, Colonel Adams, that the Democrat Party supports this. They let it happen under their watch because they support it. And if you don't believe that, look at Europe, look over at the UK, look at London, look at Sweden, like you mentioned earlier, look at all of the Germany, all these different European countries who have allowed it to happen. And then you ask, well, why would they allow this to happen? Why is France inundated? With all of the people that these people are not there illegally. They allowed them to come in. They wanted them there. They did it with intent, and Democrats want to do that in our country too. It
like
is with intent. They understand what's happening. They're doing it on purpose.
socialists,
Yeah.
socialist states. But Teddy Roosevelt said, "One flag, one language." So we're sitting there watching TV the other night, and McDonald's comes on in Spanish on regular airtime. I mean, so the big corporations are buying into this. One one flag, one language. But then you have commercials on TV in Spanish. I don't get it. See, it's all about the money.
Oh, no question. Somebody sent me a video the other day, and I responded back to that video that, oh, I know what it was. It was some Islamicists protesting McDonald's because McDonald's has bacon and non-halal, meat and things like that. And they were protesting McDonald's. And then I laughed because, I work in Springfield, Missouri fairly often, and I make that drive, all the time. And every time I drive to Springfield, Missouri, I see along the highway there are these big billboards from McDonald's, Stuckey's. I can't recall all of the different places, and they're written in Hindu, they're written in Arabic because they know that these truck drivers are out. They know people are out on the roads who are Hindu, who are Muslims, and they want to bring them into McDonald's and Stuckey's. And I think it's kind of funny that they turned around and protested McDonald's. Like, seriously, McDonald's just caters to you people.
Hey, Kevin Joseph just commented. He said, "This is really good." He says, "People don't plan to fail; they just fail to plan." Well, I like that.
Very, very good comment, Kevin. Colonel Adams. Oh, I'm sorry. What were you going to say?
I think I've heard that before, but it's been a long time, and that's perfect. It's exactly what I'm talking about.
Yes.
Why would it hurt to have a plan? You know why people don't have a plan? Because they're scared.
Oh, there's no question about it. Now. I know Kevin. I know Kevin definitely has a plan, and I think a lot of people who listen to the show may, probably do have a plan because we're probably all along the same line of thinking. But for those people who are not prepared, I just want to mention something to you. As I just bought, I trust me, I have cameras, I have trail cameras, I have all kinds of stuff going on, sensors everywhere, and I just bought some more cameras. But you have to have a camera around your home. You just have to. I don't care, if you have no land, lots of land, doesn't matter. You can buy some very inexpensive wireless cameras to put outside your home because you know what? Why take the chance? And then what? Something happens, and then you say, "Oh, well, darn it! I wished I had a camera. If I did, maybe I would have known what it was or who it was." Go out and get those cameras. Come out to some Washington Guard meetings and learn how to use your weapon. There's a lot of different ways to prepare.
There's a big screen monitor in every level of this house in 2 downstairs, and my surveillance cameras are on that 24/7. So, and I won't tell you how many cameras that I've got, several acres out here, and every square inch of that is on camera.
As it should be. The same way I've got sensors, I've got trail cams, cameras, you name it, everything hooks up to my little cell phone. So anytime something's going on, I can see it, wherever I am. And and I like to know things. If somebody's walking down my driveway or driving down I want to know. If somebody's back in the tree line, I can't see them. They're a couple acres back, but I want to know. And I don't think that anyone should be complacent. I'm not trying to scare people, but I don't think people should be complacent because you know what? Something that we've talked about before, we haven't talked about in a while, but some of these cartels, what we've been hearing for some time now is that they're not getting the drugs they need to sell. And so obviously they're losing money, but a lot of them are getting out, I'm not going to say getting out of the drug business, but they're finding other ways to take advantage of people to make more money. And Trende Aragua is a big group that has very much learned how to do that. They've brought in millions of dollars, quite honestly, here in the United States by doing, guess what? Robbing people. They've gone from drug dealing to robbing people. And they have these very organized groups that go out in primarily wealthy neighborhoods. And they find ways to get into your home when you're not around. They take anything they can get their hands on. And they've accumulated millions of dollars by doing this. And trust me, you don't want to be the next person because it's literally just a matter of time before they start killing people when they're coming into their homes. And it's just a matter of time.
Yeah, and we imported the people that's doing that too. But there's people in France. I think that it's sad, but the people in France were literally at one big rally, anti-Islamic rally, were carrying sharpened sticks.
Right.
The only reason they had to protect their families with sharpened sticks. How is that possible? How does the government look at that and say, well, okay, well, we're here to protect you? You know what Ronald Reagan said about that. But the other thing is, you can buy all the weapons you want and can get, but if you're not proficient with them, you're just buying guns for the bad guys. I don't know
Correct.
how many people that I've trained that have a gun, had a gun for years, inherited it from their father. It was a bring back from World War II, and have never fired it. They think having a gun is all they need to do.
Right.
Another thing, too, the overall mentality of the American populace, the majority, thinks that this thing will somehow work itself out.
Right.
This jam we're in, they do. They think they're going to sit back. Well, you got people like me and there's some other people doing these. Well, they'll take care of it. It'll work itself out. Not this time.
Not when they show up on your doorstep. And it's happening in all of these different towns. And I don't want to bring in Walmart into the mix, but you have to, because, and I know this, what I'm going to tell you right now, I've talked about on the show before, it is a fact. It came directly from a friend of mine who is in the FBI, who is working on the investigations right now, that gangs, specifically, again, Trende Aragua, that they have infiltrated the Spark app. Spark is the group, the driver program that delivers Walmart's orders, and they have infiltrated that app. They have all gotten jobs. Matter of fact, you can't even, some areas you can't get a job driving for Spark because they have infiltrated literally the Spark app. And they're the ones out making the deliveries because guess what? They're casing your house. They're making these big deliveries and they're casing your house. They're casing your neighborhood. And it is a fact. It is absolutely a fact. You have to be careful and you have to be prepared at all times. And Colonel Adams, to your point, not only do you have to be trained to use your weapon, but you have to be confident to take that first step because if you hesitate, it's too late.
Well, the more proficient you become, the more confidence you have. And the more confidence you have, you keep a cooler head when the thing happens. So practice, people. I mean, I know I'm beating that drum all the time, but my entire backyard is a training facilities, basically for Deanna to bring her skills up, and we're in a jam here.
There's no question.
There's nothing funny about this except, well, never mind. Hey, I'll let you go. I'll let you close. Oh, hey, I've been busy having listened to your show for the last week. Did you talk about? You sent me that thing on the up in Minnesota of all the foods that's been tainted.
No. As a matter of fact, I didn't, and I was planning on talking about that tomorrow. But you know what? We're
Okay.
here.
No. That's fine.
No. Do you have time to? Do you have a couple minutes to stick around? We'll just talk about it now.
Well, go ahead and tell them. This is interesting.
Okay, because in Colonel Adams, you and I have talked about this before because we talked about a food processing plant down in Missouri, down in what is that, Hayti, Missouri. Well, I'll tell you, there was a big report that was released, and it named all of the food processing plants across the United States that are hiring primarily Somalis to work. And Colonel Adams, if you want to fill everybody in, I'll go back and look at the list so we can cover that here really quick. It'll only take me a second to find it.
This is Purina, and they make animal food. This is horrible.
Well, it's kind of, I mean, I would say it's unbelievable, but it's really not unbelievable because guess what? This isn't new. This has been going on for a long time. And there's a video. I don't know if I sent you the video, but there's some videos that go along with the video. I've got the list here. There are some videos that go along where they're saying, "Hey, America, these are your food processing plants," and they've hired all of these Somalis to work in these food processing plants. I'm going to tell you right now, it's not just Somalis. This article just happened to be about Somalis, and they were showing video that whistleblowers have sent in of these various Somalis washing their feet in the same sink where your food products are, using the bathroom like in the corner of the room, going to the bathroom, defecating in the sink, going to the bathroom, and they don't use toilet paper. They use their hands as toilet paper because that's what they do in their own country. And they're coming out and they're not washing their hands. The videos are vile, absolutely vile. And so, Colonel Adams, here's the list I have right here. Now, this is a list. It's listed as all the major food plants. Now, these are specifically the ones I'm going to read you are in Minnesota. They are specifically ones where Somalis in Minnesota are working. There's a bigger list with other places, but this is specifically Somalis in Minnesota. Hormel Foods, Austin, Minnesota. Quality Pork Processors, Austin, Minnesota. JBS Pork Processing Plant, Worthington, Minnesota. Jenny O Turkey Store, Jenny O Turkey Plant. These are in Melrose, Minnesota. Jenny O Turkey Store Plant, one in Pelican Rapids. I wouldn't be buying any Jenny O turkeys. Schwann's, of all places, Schwann's in Marshall, Minnesota. Faribault Foods Canning Plant, Faribault, Minnesota. CHS Soybean Processing Plant in Fairmont, Minnesota. CHS Oilseed Soy Refining Plant in Mankato. Cargill, I'm really surprised by Cargill. Cargill Turkey and Cooked Meats in Albert Lee. Cargill Protein Processing, Monticello. Cargill Protein Processing in Big Lake. Land O'Lakes Dairy Plant. Think about that, Land O'Lakes. Melrose. I'm just going to go through the rest of them because there's a lot. General Mills Cereal. General Mills Frozen Waffles. Let's see. Kemp's Dairy and Ice Cream Plant. Pilgrim's Pride in Cold Spring. Pepsi Beveraging Plant in Burnsville. Ray's Coca-Cola bottling plant in Eagan, Minnesota. And there's another list of processing plants all across the country. These are ones specifically in Minnesota where Governor Tim Walz has promoted these companies to hire Somalis who are here in our country illegally to work at these various processing plants. And their hygiene standards are not really quite up to par with what we're used to.
I mean, I like to know who's handling my food.
Oh my goodness. Doesn't it make you not, it makes you want to handle, like, to do your own food processing. You don't want to buy anything from these companies, that's for sure.
Well, this
It's
is
kind of scary.
and there's a lot more on there, big name companies. This is a form of guerrilla warfare. This is not just carelessness. They're just nasty people, period.
Well, they're from different countries. Remember when the Republicans, the Trump administration was just blasted over talking about the Somalis and I think it was in Ohio, Springfield, Ohio. And people in Springfield, Ohio were saying, it wasn't just made up. They were saying they're killing our pets. The Somalis are killing our pets. The Somalis, are killing. And then they have this video where they show this they go out to investigate. There's a Somali man who goes down to the local pond and grabs a goose and he's walking it down the street to his house because you know what? It's not that they're necessarily bad people. It's the fact that where they're from in the country of Somalia, when you see a duck, that's called dinner. If you see a dog or cat, that's called dinner.
You know,
That's just how they live.
you know what's faster than an Ethiopian chicken? Nothing. Ah, nothing. So you're right. Hey, I gotta go walk the dog. Uh, See you next Monday, people. Okay, pay attention and get rid of your Land Lakes out of your refrigerator because it's tainted.
Orlando Lakes. Yeah,
Thanks, guys.
if your food's coming from Minnesota, no. Thank you, Colonel Joe Adams with the Washington Guard. So happy to have you. Reach out to Colonel Joe Adams with the Washington Guard at washingtonguard.com. Thank you so much for Colonel Adams for having joined us today. Always happy to have Colonel Joe Adams in the morning on Monday mornings, of course, every Monday morning. And yeah, Kevin Joseph, yes, it is nasty. And I know if Colonel Adams was still with us, he'd be like, "Don't feel bad about saying it," but I do. I feel bad. I don't want to rail on the Somalis, but what they're telling us is factual. So we talk about it because it's factual. I saw the videos myself. You can go out, you can go online, you can see the videos yourself. And it's not that they're necessarily bad people. They just come from a place that has different standards than we do. We Americans, we go to different places and we get bashed all the time because we talk too much, or people have vile language, or we're obnoxious. That's just our culture, I guess. And then it's the same thing. You have people coming over from different countries, not just Somalia, but they come over into our country and their culture is just different. Especially, and this is why Donald Trump, listed those. We talked about that on that Saturday show, those 19, what he referred to as third world countries, where we're not going to allow those people to come into our country because they can't assimilate. It's too hard to assimilate. When you come from a country, which is really sad or is it sad? I don't know. But you come from a country where if you go to the lake and you see ducks, those ducks are free to take. You can eat as many of those ducks as you want. If you go and there is no land that's private, you can go and fish and take the ducks, take the wildlife. If you see a lizard, guess what? That's dinner. And a lot of countries don't have the same feelings that we have, emotional connections to dogs and cats or other pets. So it's perfectly normal for them in other countries to take a dog or a cat and kill it and eat it. Look at there's parts of New York where they have that no-go zone, where they have signs up, "Do not walk your dog here," because in our culture, dogs are filthy. We don't allow dogs on our streets. So if you're a New Yorker, you better not take your dog walking down through a no-go zone. And let's see here. D, food processing plant in Michigan, Muslims and Hindus washing their feet in the toilet before prayer. D, I saw that video. I wasn't sure where that was, but I did see either that video or one just like it. And again, it is just, it's not the same. I don't know about you guys. I've been to the airport before, where I've been in the airport and I've seen people washing their feet in the sink and different things. It's just, it's tough for people to come here and assimilate to our culture, where washing your feet in the sink is really just not appropriate. We consider that to be very dirty. And typically speaking, when Americans visit another country, what are we supposed to do? We're supposed to, before we go, we're supposed to learn their culture. And, in let's say the Japanese culture, where you remove your shoes before you walk into sometimes a restaurant or a business or somebody's home, we're expected to know that that's the proper way to behave, that you don't put your shoes up on a table because your shoes are considered, very dirty, which of course they are. There's different cultures in different places that we must abide by. And it's the same here, but nobody wants to talk about that, because here in America, if you tell other people from other countries that they have to learn your culture and abide by your culture, then you're a racist person, right? It's insane, absolutely insane. Paul says, "I don't want any Muslim working in a pork packing factory, only because they obviously can't partake of pork. So why would they work there other than for nefarious reasons?" Paul, I don't know, but I do know there are a lot of folks of the Muslim, Islamic faith that do work in pork processing plants. Now, one thing I want to also backtrack on, because we talked about this earlier, and that is that, again, what I think I said earlier, it's like 1.5 billion Muslims in the world, and only 15 to 20% of those Muslims, are radicalized. And of course, many of them are here in the United States, but the rest of the Muslims are good people. They have the right intentions, and I'm hoping that those are the ones working in the pork processing plant. I think most people who abide by Sharia, strict Sharia, wouldn't even be able to set foot inside of a pork processing plant. But to your point, Paul, and I'm glad you brought this up, is that what we do have to worry about is when you allow people to handle your food, then you do have the potential possibility of a terror attack, quite honestly, at one of these food processing plants. And you know, it only takes one person to come in, let's say to Lando Lake, and put some type of poison in the butter at that Minnesota processing plant, you know, or in some other dairy product. You know, let's say I bought some Lando Lake's cottage cheese the other day because I do high protein and low carb, and I was going to make some blueberry muffins with some cottage cheese, and it came from Land O'Lakes. I'm like, maybe I better look at that label before I decide to make my cottage cheese blueberry muffins. And then, you know, you have your meat processing plant. They inject meat with all kinds of junk. It doesn't take much to contaminate food in a lot of different ways. From just, you know, being dirty and spitting in it or getting feces on your food. And by the way, if you go back and you look, I'm not trying to make, you know, gross anybody out, but if you look at the testing of various food items, you will see that there is so much human feces mixed in with your food. It is true. It is true. And there's so much rat droppings and different things that are allowable and mixed in your food. I don't know how they get there, but it's kind of scary. That is for sure. Ryan says either integrate and assimilate to our culture and rule of law or leave. And Ryan, what would happen if we go to another country and we don't assimilate? You know, I watch countless videos of tourists going to various Islamic countries, and guess what? They have to wear a head covering because that's the proper thing to do when you're in their culture. Now, what do you think would happen if you went into, let's just say as an example, I saw a video recently. There was a guy with a tattoo on his arm, and he was walking on a beach in, I might have been Pakistan. He's walking, and all these people are flocking him. Now, they're being very nice to him, but they warn him that, hey, you need to cover up your arm. We don't allow tattoos here. Even if you don't live here, even if you're American, we don't allow tattoos. If the wrong person sees you, they're going to cut your arm off, you know, or worse. And I'm like, wow, that's, you know, crazy. We are expected, if you go to a country that is against tattoos, guess what? You have to cover your tattoo up. Or if you can't cover it up, guess what? You can't go. You know, if you want to go to a country, you know, there's several different ones I could, you know, name. There are many. You know, let's just say if you want to go to, one of them would be Afghanistan. You, as an American female, if you go to Afghanistan, you have to wear your head covering. There are several Taliban checkpoints throughout Afghanistan. If you're not wearing your head covering, guess what? You're going to go to prison or worse. So yes, please assimilate to our culture. Paul says the newly elected mayor of Dearborn, Michigan was a nice guy at first. Now he's showing his true colors. They smile at you all the while waiting to conquer all of our Christian values. You know, interesting that you say that, Paul, because I think myself, many of you have probably seen the video of, I can't remember that guy's name, the mayor of Dearborn, Michigan. There was a man recently that had a city council hearing where they were going to name a street after an Islamic person. And this, you know, white guy comes in and he's standing at the city council meeting and he's saying, I am against this. You know, he names off some valid reasons because the person had been guilty of doing some, you know, nefarious things. And then he goes on, you know, and makes some very valid points. And of course, the mayor of Dearborn tells the guys, like, I'm the mayor of this city and you're not welcome here. In fact, you should leave, and I'm going to have a parade on the day you leave in honor of you leaving this area. You're absolutely correct. And that just goes to show that somebody, if you're in a situation like in Dearborn, you can't stand up and give your reasons for the entirety of Dearborn. Missions, by the way, is going to be a no-go zone. It's just going to happen. And Dee says, look at how many food recalls we have for bacteria or recently shredded cheese, right, with metal shavings. Makes you wonder, was it an accident or intentional? And we are going to have to wonder. We're going to have to wonder because you just don't know what's going to happen. And you've got to be careful. I hate to say it, but you've just got to be careful because you really just don't know. There's so many different ways where we can be attacked. And it would be so easy to poison our food system, put some type of biological agent into a food product. It would be so easy to do. I hope that all of these companies have safeguards in place where that can't happen. Little fecal matter, little mouse dropping, not much you're gonna be able to do about that. But unfortunately, process your own food at home. You can go to your local, there are places, I promise you, no matter where you live, where you can go and buy your own fresh cream and make your own butter and various dairy products. You certainly can do that. You can purchase your own beef from a butcher where it's not processed in some of these companies. Same goes for pork. Contact your local farmer. There are certainly ways to avoid all of this. It takes a lot more effort, time, and potentially money, but there are certainly ways to avoid it. No question about that. One last thing I want to talk about before we get too far. Kevin says Hamtramck has banned the transgender flag from being flown anywhere. How ironic. It is interesting, isn't it, Kevin? Because we see all of these far, far, far left liberals who are part of the transgender movement. And I'm not just talking about LGBTQ group entirely, but I'm talking about some of these people who are really for, free the Palestinians, fighting for, these different rights and buddying up to all of these, Islamic leaders. And then guess what happens? And they turn against them, because if you're truly following Islam and you're following Sharia law, if you're gay or part of that LGBTQ community, you're an infidel. They actually look at you worse than they do the average, white Christian. So that's where all common sense goes out the window, doesn't it? All common sense goes right out the window. I've got one last thing to talk about before it's time to head out. I don't know about you guys, but I have a very busy day this morning starting at 10 a.m. that I need to prepare for. One last thing I want to talk about is Attorney General Pam Bondi. Do you guys recall when, under the Biden administration, under the Obama administration, when they targeted conservatives? They went through your bank accounts. Remember that? Looking for transactions. Oh, did you buy any weapons? Did you buy any ammunition? What are you doing with your money? Are you supporting Republicans in Congress? What's happening? Or campaigns. What's happening to your money? What are you doing? Monitoring phone conversations, monitoring your social media posts to see if you are potentially a terrorist, going to school board meetings to see if you're a terrorist. Remember that? Well, the tables have turned. So Pam Bondi, Attorney General Pam Bondi, she stated that we have a new program. We are going to be accumulating a list of extremists across the United States. And here are some of the things they're looking for. One would be they're looking for extremists, people who are radical with gender ideology. Are you somebody who's part of maybe a trans power movement? Are you radical when it comes to gender ideology? Then guess what? You're going to be considered extremist. If you oppose law enforcement, you're going to be considered an extremist. If you support mass migration, you're definitely going to make the list. Anti-American, anti-capitalist, anti-Christian. If you are any of these things, then guess what? You have made the list of extremism. I remember when most of us were probably on that list under Obama and Joe Biden. The tables have turned. Good morning, Annette. Yes, Annette, it has been a while. Happy to see you back. You'll have to go back and watch Col Joe Adams when he was on the show. He talked about a lot of good stuff. So yeah, I think that's kind of interesting. Attorney General Pam Bondi making this announcement that she's got a naughty list. She has a naughty list. That naughty list is if you're an extremist, guess what? You're going to be placed on Pam Bondi's naughty list. We're going to keep an eye on you because you are a threat to society. If you're anti-Christian, and I'm not talking about people who just aren't Christian. I'm talking about people who are anti-Christian, who are outwardly anti-Christian, who make threats against Christians, anti-American. If you're out there supporting, mass migration, wanting the borders open, then yes, you're an extremist. And what's interesting is those values are, if you want to call them values, they are extremist, aren't they? That's the what I call the far. It used to be 2% on the left. Now it's about 5%. All right, guys. Well, that is it for me. I must run. I've got to work. I've got to get ready for work, which begins at 10 a.m. I am going to be here tomorrow. I think I'm going to be here Wednesday. I'm supposed to work Wednesday morning, but I think I have somebody covering some bases for me because I've got two things going on at once on Wednesday afternoon. Thursday morning, I will not be here. For those of you who understand my little health journey I've been on, I have my first appointment with an infectious disease doctor on Thursday morning. Gosh, like 7:45 a.m. That's really early. And so, unfortunately, I will not have a show on Thursday morning. I will be back on Friday. Hopefully, all things go well. I'll be back on Friday. I don't expect to learn much in that appointment, but maybe I'll get some direction. I'm guessing more testing and more scans coming my way, but we'll see. Then I have a follow-up cardiology appointment. I'm supposed to get a PET scan of the heart, so I'm going to be talking about that somewhere down the road. I've never been through that process. But I do thank you guys all for joining me. I thank Colonel Joe Adams for joining us today. I hope you guys all have a really good day. I hear the weather's going to warm up a little bit today. I think it was the feel like temperature was 13 when I first started the show. I think it's going to get a little bit better than that. The snow's melting at my house. It probably is at yours also. So have a really good day. I will see you all tomorrow, and try to get outside and enjoy some of the